Hey, Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day. All Bills, all the time. And now Matt Beauvais and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
Well, it's the day before Halloween, but Matt, I have to say, I'm going to be wearing this out trick-or-treating tomorrow night with my son. And it glows in the dark. I don't want to scare any kids.
Yeah.
But that's what I got.
I like it. I like that you are committing to the holiday. I am just going to be walking next to my daughter in probably a hoodie. So I don't have a costume. I don't have a matching costume, anything like that. I'm just going to kind of lean into, hey, she's the cute one. Give her candy.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm just going to hang out in the background.
But we all know she's not old enough to eat that candy yet. So who's eating that candy, pal?
Definitely my wife and I.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, listen, it's always game day in Buffalo. Thanks for tuning in. Sal Capaccio, Matt Beauvais. And of course, we're on audio wherever you pod, iTunes, WGR, Sports Radio 550, the Odyssey app, wherever you pod. And then, of course, we're on video at Sal Sports on the YouTube channel as well. And it's Miami week. We know what that means here in Buffalo. So we got a lot to get to, and we're not going to waste any time. We're going to bring in Alain Poupart of SI, who writes for the Miami Dolphins. He joins us now on the podcast, and we really appreciate that. Alan, I've been on your show. You've been on my show. I know it's the first time you've gotten a chance to talk to Matt, but we really appreciate you taking some time out.
Absolutely. And if I put on any costume tomorrow night, I'm going to be a wiener. hot dog costume. That's
I love it. Well, listen, Alan, I have been saying on the radio this week, people have asked me about this game and the Dolphins side of things. And my response generally is, I think their season's on the line. I really do. I mean, mathematically, is it? Of course not. There is a path to the playoffs still, but it feels to me like if they don't come to Buffalo and get the upset, things could get really kind of spiral out of control for the wrong reasons this year. Is that a good way to put it or no?
No, without question. I despise the term must-win game.
Yep.
Because to me, it's must-win. If you lose, you're mathematically eliminated. Otherwise, it's not really must-win. This is as close. This is an us-win. We'll just leave out the M. Especially with the trade deadline coming up on Tuesday, because if the Dolphins go to 2-6, then I could see certain players maybe being dangled, even if it's just for a late-round pick. For example, Calais Campbell, do the Dolphins want to do him a solid in this possibly his last season? He's playing fabulous. Would they want to do him a solid and trade him to a contender? Because at 2-6, you're not really a contender. Whereas 3-5 in this muddled AFC, beyond the few top teams, there's life, especially if you're coming off of a big upset win at Buffalo, which is an entirely different story in itself.
Is it as simple as that because of the Tua injury, they're not a good team? Or is this team just fundamentally flawed across the board and Tua getting hurt made it even worse?
They are fundamentally flawed if we're talking Super Bowl contention. I think the Dolphins maybe fooled themselves into thinking we're this close because they were 11-4 at one point last year. And then they played at Baltimore, at Buffalo. At Baltimore versus Buffalo to end the season. Got spanked by the Ravens. Got beat by the Bills, even though the score was only 21-14. The Bills had a pretty significant advantage in yardage, and then they got completely handled in the playoffs. But I think they fooled themselves into thinking, well, we had a lot of injuries down the stretch. At Kansas City, it was insanely cold. So if we avoid the injuries and we can get a home game, maybe we can become that team. And I think maybe they thought they were better than they were, and what they did with the backup court, and that applies to the backup quarterback position, and their failure to upgrade that spot in the offseason, it's borderline criminal for a team that thought of itself as a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I want to look big picture too, because the other thing I'm getting out of Miami from, people like you and other people that cover the team is, look, if not now, when, right? This was supposed to be the year you got to within maybe 2 quarters of winning the division last year against the Buffalo Bills. They get the punt return. And it was, okay, we're there now. After 4 years of winning the division for the Bills, it's time for us to finally take that step and pass this team, at the very least be right there again. And it feels like the chasm is getting wider, and there might not be a path to really get there after this year based on what the roster looks like and the salary cap. Does that put more urgency on this?
It does, but here's the thing: is I wouldn't expect necessarily drastic changes in terms of the foundation of the team,
Right.
because the Dolphins went heavy in the offseason on extensions with Tyreek, Tua, Jalen Waddle, Jalen Ramsey, Mike McDaniel. With the exception of Ramsey, who's a defensive player, that's your core offense, which is why some folks would think Mike McDaniel's job could be in jeopardy if the season continues to go south. These kind of a package deal with Tua. He's the one who's got the most out of Tua. Very hard for me to believe that they're going to let go Mike McDaniel when they're tied to Tua for at least in a couple of years because of the contract they gave him. So
didn't they also give McDaniel an extension recently?
No, they did. I mentioned that as well.
Yeah, that's right.
If I didn't, my bad. And in the case of Ramsey and McDaniel, it was with 2 years left on their contract, and with Tyreek Hill with 2 years left on their contract. And of course, the argument could have been made like, what have you accomplished to be throwing out extensions like that all over the. So I don't know that the Dolphins can go in a vastly different direction, even if it continues to go south. And if they can somehow, let's say they go, 7-10 or 8-9, you can bet they're going to point and see, well, if we didn't have those 4 games without Tua, who knows where the season would have gone.
I know that there's still half of the season left. They could come into Buffalo and get a win and figure things out. But who deserves the blame at this point, at the halfway point? Is it simply, well, Tua got hurt? Is it Greer? Is it McDaniel? Is it a little bit of everybody? Like, is there one person who can kind of this fall on?
Yeah, that's a tough one. The Dolphins operate, they don't have a strong manager in terms of, this is the guy who calls the shot. I will get you the players coach and you coach them. They don't have a coach who's the strong guy who says, get me the players I want. What they would talk about is they want to do everything in collaboration. Kind of get the feeling, I don't know this for a fact, but my very, very strong suspicion is Mike McDaniel convinced Chris Greer, I can make it work. We have Skylar Thompson and Mike White. They're going to battle it out for the number 2 spot. I'll make it work with whoever winds up getting the job done or winning the battle in training camp. They wound up picking Skylar Thompson. He's had only 1 start in his defense. It was against Seattle in week 3. Got injured, left the game in the 3rd quarter. And when he was in the lineup, he looked out of place, like he was overwhelmed, which was the most disheartening thing of all. It wasn't that he was missing throws. He looked like he was overwhelmed, like the moment was too big for him. And immediately it's like, and then after he gets hurt, then they have to go fetch Tyler Huntley from the Baltimore Ravens practice squad. And Taylor Huntley, you guys know, is a running quarterback coming to an offense that's predicated on the quick passing game with the timing and all that. Didn't work. So I'm going to assign who deserves the blame for the failure to address the backup quarterback situation. The answer is yes.
Alain Poupart joining us. He is the publisher of Miami Dolphins on SI, host of the All Dolphins podcast. You can follow him on Twitter, by the way, at Poupart NFL. All right, what is this team doing well, though? We talk about all these negatives and the record's not where you want it. Is there anything that Dolphins fans can point to and say, you know what, this has been okay for this team this year?
Well, the last 3 weeks they've run the ball very, very well.
Okay.
I don't know the exact numbers, but it was a $195, I think, against New England in week 5. Came back against the Colts, 188, and even against Arizona, it was 150 on the nose. So they're doing that very well. The defense has been good for the most part, except it hasn't been clutch. You saw that against the Bills in week 2, and then by that I mean Dolphins get stuff on 4th and 1, like near midfield. The next play, boom, James Cook goes 49 yards for a touchdown. Yep. That's like not responding to adversity. Sunday against the Cardinals, the offense played pretty well the entire game. Up 27-18, you give up a touchdown. Now it's 27-25. The Dolphins have the ball. They have to put it away. They can't kill the clock. And then the defense is asked to rise up, doesn't do it. Cardinals march down the field, lose the game. So it's not, the defense has been good, but not clutch, because I think in terms of total yards allowed, I know heading into the game against Arizona, they were 4th overall. Now I think, I don't know, I haven't checked this week, probably 6th or 7th, which is still good. But that's been an issue. They also don't get takeaways. They don't get sacks. They have 9 sacks, 3 takeaways. Right. But the running game's been very, very good. The passing game's been brutal, except for an 80-yard pass to Tyreek Hill and a 63-yard pass to Jalen Waddle in the opener.
How's Poyer look?
Great intangibles, great leader, gritty, not great. He's also dealt with some injuries. He's had a shin injury, missed a couple of games, but he was beaten in coverage Sunday against Arizona on the final drive. He had man-to-man coverage against tight end Trey McBride on a 3rd and 1, and McBride was open by like 5 yards. I mean,
it just sounds like the reason why he's not in Buffalo anymore, to be quite honest. Everything you just said is, we love the guy here, all the intangibles, leader. I mean, it's what you want, but the fact is he's gotten older, and it's taken a toll on his body, and you can see it.
Correct. Yeah, he likes to speak to cover in the back end. I mean,
I want to ask about injuries. Let me put this up here. If you can see it on your screen there, 16 names on the injury report. Now, 4 of those were rest days, but 6 are actually dealing with injuries who did not practice. Some notable names on that list. What are we thinking about guys like, I guess you'd say, Sealer and his eye injury, which is just awful, by the way. And the other one,
Javon
Holland. That's the one. Thank you. Yes.
I wrote about this on the website, Miami Dolphins on SI.com today, that if you read between the lines of what Mike McDaniel said before practice, they're both going to give it a shot, doing everything they can. If you were to ask me right now, I'd say it's certainly on the lesser side of 50-50 that either of those play. And Sealer's a huge loss because through the first 7 games of the season, he'd be a leading candidate for team MVP, along with the aforementioned Calais Campbell. I'm not even sure if I mentioned him before, or if I hadn't mentioned him, there we go. And Javon Holland is like, he broke a bone in a hand, came back last week, sustained a knee injury in the first half, didn't come back, and not looking promising, which puts Poyer and Marcus May, another veteran, at safety for this game.
I often get criticized by the people who listen to our podcast because I have, I guess, fallen for the Dolphins too many times. I always think that they're just on the verge of getting it figured out. They're a really dangerous offense, and I always probably give them a little bit too much credit. And this dates back to the last several years. But I once again kind of feel that way. Going into this game, I'm like, I don't like the spot for the Bills because I do think that Miami has to win this game. If they are going to win this game, how do they do it? How do they pull it off?
Well, I think it's got to be the running game. And if you look back to the Saturday night game in 2022, Raheem Mostert broke off. I think it was 67 yards, like pretty early in the game. They rushed for 180 yards, and it was a 29-29 game, 6 minutes left. The Dolphins had the ball past midfield. They couldn't finish the drive. They had to punt. Josh Allen drives them down, and they lose. I think that's the ticket to victory more so than it would be the passing game, because the Bills certainly have solved Tyreek Hill beating teams over the top. His numbers against the Bills are really poor, other than one game in the playoffs when he was with the Chiefs, but with the Dolphins just hasn't been there. So they seemingly have found a solution to contain him. And not only would that help the Dolphins offensively, it would help them defensively, because without Sealer and Holland, and let's not forget the 2 guys who were their stud pass rushers last year, Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, are not on the roster right now. Phillips is out for the year. Bradley Chubb is still on PUP. He may or may not return in 2024. So right now they're getting no pass rush, and that's part of it. So the defense is in for a tough day. If they can run the ball, control the clock, that's going to help them that way. So to me, any path to victory has to focus center on the running game.
And we know the numbers Josh Allen's had against the Miami Dolphins, right? I mean, we all know it's incredible. And, to keep him off the field obviously would be a benefit. And the Bills haven't been great at stopping the run. The last couple of weeks, they've been much better, but they are still near the bottom of the league in yards per play. I think that's about it from me. And Matt, you got anything else for Allen before we let him go?
Can they figure this out? Like, do they have if they, let's say they win on Sunday, I know hypothetically, do they got enough juice that they can get to a playoff spot, or are they in too big of a hole?
I mean, obviously, it's not likely. I mean, if you look at the playoff predictors, wherever you find them, the numbers are like 1.3% or something to that effect. It's not if everything is functioning right, it's not a terrible team. They're certainly a lot better than they played, and the offense showed signs of functionality and potentially being explosive last week with Tua at quarterback. The margin for error is microscopic. I certainly wouldn't hold my breath they're going to make the playoffs. Is it impossible? No. likely, especially since they haven't won in Buffalo since 2016.
Well, the Bills the Dolphins had a 3-game lead on the Bills with 5 to play last year, and the Bills caught them. So anything can happen. It is football, right? Alan, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. We kept even longer than we anticipated, so I really appreciate you coming on. And obviously, enjoy the rest of this season. Who knows? Maybe we'll talk again in the future.
Yes, well, let's talk before they meet in the playoffs.
There you go. Exactly right. Thanks a lot, Alan. Happy Halloween to you.
Thanks, Alan.
Right back at you guys. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you. That is Alain Poupart of SI, and he is the All Dolphins podcast. All right, Matt. Well, that was not very encouraging from the Miami Dolphins side of things, but we know the hole that they're in. I look at their schedule too, real quick on the Dolphins.
Oh.
I mean, they go to Green Bay on Thanksgiving night. They still have to go to Cleveland. They still have to go to the Jets, whatever they are. But my point is, cold weather cities just haven't been very friendly to them, obviously, over the last couple of years. So they're in a pretty big hole here.
Yeah, and the other thing too is they still got to play the Jets twice, right? So you can look at this one of two ways. You can say if they beat up on each other and one of the team wins both of those games, they could kind of save their season because right there, you're sinking your opponent and you're giving yourself 2 wins. But if they split the games, which I would say is probably the most likely outcome, then you're kind of hurting each other here. And I think that benefits the Bills even more so. I've heard a couple of people say like, oh, the Bills have already won the AFC East. I don't like that. I don't like it for the reason that you gave about what happened last year with the Dolphins at the end of the year. Because the Dolphins had won the AFC East going into December, and then they folded and the Bills got hot. I don't think that this Bills team will fold. But at the same time, you're always a freak injury or a weird thing away. So like build as big of a cushion as humanly possible 100%. And just get to the playoffs. So I don't like the whole oh, they've already won the division, or there's, I saw people posting, hey, they could win the division in week 11 if they do this, or week 12 if they do this. Just keep stacking wins because the Bills' schedule after these next couple weeks becomes an absolute bear. Get these wins, and then you figure out the rest of it.
Interesting you say that. I think the schedule is very favorable other than a couple of games. I mean, they've gone through kind of their toughest stretch, I think, the Bills here through their first 8 games. Now, look, the Rams are a little better now than we thought, but Indianapolis is going to be tougher with Joe Flacco. But other than San Francisco, who isn't even as good as we thought they'd be, in Kansas City, Detroit is probably the one, right? But you still have the Patriots twice, and you still have the Jets again. Indianapolis. I mean, these are games you should win.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they're not. The Bills will probably be favored in every game that they play from here on out, except Detroit and then maybe Kansas City. But I think they'll probably be even favored against Kansas City unless, things go off the rails here. It's just the way that it all pieces together. We know it just happens. They are going to lose a game that they're not supposed to lose. They do it every single year. I thought for a little while it was going to be the Titans game in the first half of that game, and then they figured things out. Every year, they lose a game they're supposed to lose. Now, saying that, they're going to win a game that most people don't think they're going to win. So that's either at Detroit or against the 49ers or against the Chiefs. I think they could win every single game left on their schedule, but that's not realistic. So I do think that you got to get through these next 2 games with a couple wins, and then after that, you figure things out from there. I'm not saying if you lose, your season is done or anything like that.
They have a 4-game lead.
That's what I mean. They got a 4-game lead. I'm not suggesting anything like that. I'm just saying keep building it as much as possible. Just so you don't. We went to Miami last year on Sunday not knowing if they were going to even make the playoffs. Think about how crazy that is.
I get it. I do. I just think it's hard not to look at that cushion right now and say, come on, look at the lead you have, who the Jets are, what the Dolphins are right now. So I get it. You're right. We don't have to play. We don't have to take one game at a time. I understand anybody going like, come on, when is this thing going to get wrapped up? Because you just can't see it happening. But you're right. Stranger things have happened. All right, let's get it to the Bills side of things. Let's talk about the injuries. Terrel Bernard and Curtis Samuel, both limited participants. Reggie Gilliam also added to that list as a limited participant. And how about Amari Cooper? We were told he wasn't going to practice. We go out to practice on Wednesday. He's out there. He's got a wrist injury, but that's encouraging. Matt, every single player on the Bills' active roster practiced on Wednesday except for Alec Anderson, and that was a personal excused absence. So there were no injuries that caused anyone to not practice.
Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, I want to see how the week progresses for Amari Cooper and for Terrel Bernard. Good sign that they're both out there, but they both were, limited has a lot of different meanings. They are limited right now with what they are able to actually do on the practice field. So I do want to see how these next couple days play out, how they look on Thursday, how they look on Friday. Certainly promising. I would bet one of them plays of those two, because those are the two most notable names on the injury report, Amari Cooper and Terrel Bernard. I bet one of them plays and probably one of them doesn't. I don't know which one, but that's just kind of the way that I'm going into this game. I think you could actually make the case that in this particular game, Terrel Bernard might be the more valuable one because of what Alan just talked about. Achane and Mostert are really, really good. You want to be healthy in the middle there.
I would say, listen, Balen Spector's a good run defender, but Miami also presents a challenge of, getting the ball to the second level very quickly through the pass game. Yeah. And that's where Balen Spector kind of struggles as well. No doubt. I think Terrel Bernard, is just a really big, he's the captain of your defense. So if you had to choose one, I agree with that, because we all know Josh Allen, he can do it with anybody beating the Miami Dolphins, it seems like, right? You can give him anybody to throw the ball to, and his numbers have been great. The other guy that's not on the injury report, but that returned to practice that we're monitoring, Von Miller. So let me just explain the way this works, because for some reason on Tuesday night, there was a lot of confusion and I had to kind of clarify some things for people. So the Bills do have a roster exemption for Von Miller, but that expires as soon as they activate him. So once he's activated for the game, they don't get a roster exemption anymore. They cannot play Sunday's game with 54 players. They have 52 right now. They'll activate Von before Sunday's game. That'll be Saturday evening at 4 p.m. at the latest. Von becomes on the active roster. What do you expect, Matt Bove, from Von Miller going forward for the Buffalo Bills in 2024?
I expect a lot of what we saw in the first month of the season, where he was brought in on spot duty, obvious passing downs. He even kind of alluded to it today when we were talking to him about how he didn't play a ton in the Ravens game because there weren't a lot of obvious passing downs, because the Ravens just kind of ran it down their throat and they couldn't stop him. So I think we'll see him in like a 40 to 50% snap roll, maybe even a little bit less than that, probably in that NASCAR package that they've got where they're trying to get after the quarterback. And I just think that for them, it'll be trying to keep him fresh towards the end of the year, because that's when I think they would find the most value in him. I think they've gotten a lot out of Greg Rousseau has been great the last couple weeks, but Smoot has also been good. And AJ Epinesa has flashed at times. So I don't know if he's going to be somebody who takes those guys off the field a ton. I think it'll be a heavy rotation. I think Rousseau will get the most snaps, and then the rest of them will kind of all be bunched together.
Yeah, that feels about right. I think they want to stay, keeping the load management on Von. Like, he's not here to get 10 sacks in the regular season. That'd be great. He's here to close out games, to help get them to a Super Bowl, to help win those games. We also had an update from Sean McDermott on Matt Milano today. Now, I did ask Sean a couple of weeks ago on his weekly radio program about Matt, and he was very general, a little bit more today, though, when our buddy Josh Reed asked him specifically, is there still some hope that he can return this season? And Sean was, to me, very confident and optimistic without saying how confident and optimistic he is. If you read the words, they translated a little bit like some people thought he was being pessimistic, because he was answering a question, is there some hope? Yes. So there was some hope. What he was really saying was yes. And he kind of even went into how it's a different injury than last year. He's with the team right now. I would say, based on what Sean McDermott said, I would not be surprised if the window for Matt Milano, the 21-day window, opens at some point before the end of this month.
Oh, I agree. I think that based off of the comments that he's had and just the way that this has been trending the last couple of weeks, I'm thinking there's a chance they get this guy back at the start of December. So I think the window could open kind of soon. Now, once again, there's a lot of moving parts here, and they will be overly cautious with Matt Milano just based off of the caliber of player and also where they are sitting right now. Kind of the same thing as Von Miller. They want Matt Milano back for the playoffs, not for the regular season. That said, coming off the injury and as little as football as he's played the last couple of years, I think that's a guy you want to get in there and get some snaps to for the last couple games of the year, so he is almost full go for the postseason, as opposed to just kind of getting his feet wet. That would be such a massive. I mean, Dorian Williams has done a pretty good job, but there's also times when okay, he over pursued, he took a bad angle, he's getting beaten pass coverage a little bit. Matt Milano would take a defense that I think has been good and bring it to another level.
Did you, when you and your wife were pregnant, did people do like a baby pool on what date? Like you'd have the baby?
No, nobody did.
We could do a Milano pool here.
We should like everybody send us in the comments or tweet us when you think do you want to do when he plays his first game?
No, because there's only specific dates you can give for that. It's got to be when they announce they're opening the window.
Okay. All right. I will think of my date and you will think of your date, and we'll figure that out afterwards. But
I have a date in mind for sure.
Okay. Everybody, please let us know when you think they open the window for Matt Milano to return.
Because I think it's going to happen. And by the way, we have a couple questions about that. You threw it out there on X at Matt_Bove about questions. And one of those was, and I got to get who exactly asked this to us, but about when Matt Milano comes back, could we see them actually still kind of rolling with Dorian Williams? So how about, just saying, is Matt Milano still the starter regardless when he comes back?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think what they'll do is I think they'll probably ease him into it. I think Dorian Williams will play a certain amount of snaps and map. It's like they did. Remember a couple of years ago with Trey White, where they had
here's the exact question.
Okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I want to just read this.
No,
and
sure.
Give credit to Jed Breach. Jed on Twitter says, are there concerns that Matt Milano would be a regression from Williams and Bernard? He hasn't played a whole lot of football in the last 2 years. So there you go.
What I think they would do is similar to what they did with Tre'Davious White a couple of years ago, where Tre'Davious White came back on Thanksgiving in Detroit. And I believe he played 2 series and then he was done for the rest of the day. Then the next week they played on a Thursday night football game in New England. And he played like half the series in that game. And then after that, he kind of became a full go. I would imagine they do something similar with Matt Milano. That has just kind of been their MO for returning veteran players. So I think we would see him out there for a little bit, and then we would see him a little bit more, and then I think we would see him a full go, which is why I think it happens maybe even sooner than we're anticipating, because I think that they want to have that full go and then a couple weeks before they get to the playoffs.
Yeah, I like that. And it's so amazing for me to think about this team, as opposed to in the last several years, they lose Matt Milano and have to piece it together. They lose Von Miller in Thanksgiving. And this is the opposite this year. They could be getting these guys back as the season's going on. And it's pretty amazing that you could add them to an already really good defense. Of course, it's still a lot of football to play. Other injuries could happen. Okay. I don't know if there's any meat on the bone for this. We could definitely answer some questions though that people threw out there. Plus I have a couple for you.
Well, I want to ask, because we're talking about Matt Milano, the trade deadline is less than a week away. Yep. Right. And there's a couple questions about the trade deadline.
Great.
I feel like we should talk about this a little bit before we answer some of the questions. Do you anticipate them making another move? Yes or no?
Yes.
I agree. I would say yes. What position do you think they would address?
This is a tough one now, because when you say position to address, I still feel if they want to address safety, they could pick up the phone and call Micah Hyde. But I do keep the window open for maybe making a deal, because there's been reports out there that maybe it's just not working out with Mike Edwards, right? I think did Jeremy Fowler report something like that? I believe there was something like that, right? And I think they need more depth there. I just think that it's not as solidified as they'd like it to be. I could say maybe defensive tackle. A few people have mentioned that, and I would understand that. But man, you get Dwayne Carter back. It's actually, to me, a pretty deep group right now. Ilianku comes up, and you have, I don't know where you fit people in. I got Zion Logue off the practice squad, which maybe that's an indication they're getting guys off a practice squad to play. Maybe that's an indication that they don't feel great about what they have at the very bottom of it.
I mean, what if the Bills beat the Dolphins this week and they are selling? Would you call on Calais Campbell? I mean, look at how good Allen just said he's been. I know that's a big name, but I mean, talk about bolstering your defensive line. I can't imagine that would cost you a ton. I mean, we just saw what Deontay Johnson got traded for, right? Calais Campbell is a veteran. This is very clearly a rental. That is definitely a day 3 pick. I would be interested in that if you could make the money work.
The J. Cliff Clark asks, could you see the Bills trading for a linebacker or defensive tackle to shore up the run defense? I've never been in on trading for a linebacker. I think your addition at linebacker is Matt Milano.
Yeah, I think your addition at linebacker is Matt Milano, and then all of a sudden Dorian Williams is a really, really solid backup. And then if Balin Spector is your 4th guy, I feel like you're feeling a lot better about that than
let me
you
ask
do
you this.
right now.
Let's say it this way, though. He's not your 4th guy. He's your backup Mike. He's your 2.
Sure.
But I don't think you can get many backups better than what they feel they have in him anyway. Like, the guy's been with the team for 3 years. He knows the system. He's played well. He's not great, but he's a backup. I don't know what else you're not going to pluck an all-pro from another team. I think they're comfortable. And by the way, Joe Andreessen is the number 3 linebacker. Now you could make arguments either way, but look, Nicholas Morrow can't even get a jersey really well. He doesn't play. Eddie Ulofoshio can't get a jersey right now. I just don't see it.
I have a take. You're going to disagree with this. It's not a Micah Hyde take either, because I still think I still think that's happening. So I'm not going to suggest that.
I wouldn't. I think it could happen. I'm not going to dismiss it, but now we're in the window where I told you a long time ago I think it could happen. But go ahead.
I would be open to another trade for a wide receiver. Now,
I don't disagree.
there are going to be people who are like, well, then you're taking off the field Amari Cooper or Khalil Shakir or Dalton Kincaid or whatever. My rebuttal would be, I'm not taking those guys off the field. I'm eating into the snaps that Matt Collins is getting, that Curtis Samuel is eventually going to get, that Dawson Knox is going to get. I don't think that this is going to happen. I really don't. But if they did it, I think you can never have too many. That's why I really liked the Deontay Johnson move for the Ravens. I think that those guys get banged. They went into the playoffs last year with a really solid wide receiver group, and then Gabe Davis got hurt, and then all of a sudden that wide receiver group did nothing in the postseason, especially against the Chiefs. They were throwing a Trent Sherfield down the field. I think Andy Isabella was active in that game. Like, you can never have too many insurance policies. So that's why I would totally be open to it for a day 3 pick if you could go out and get another wide receiver.
I don't disagree as much as you thought I would.
Yeah. I
don't think they'll do it. As you said, I agree with you that I would be open to it. I just don't see them doing it.
It's not great asset management because you could go out and solidify another position for the same cost. And that's what I think that they will do. They'll probably do something that's really, I don't want to say unassuming because it'll be impactful, but they'll probably go make, like, remember a couple of years ago when they went and traded for, I don't remember who they traded for, but then later in the day, they traded for Dean Marlowe. I don't think it was the day they traded for Rasul. I think it was the year before that. So they traded for somebody and then they signed Dean Marlowe.
Yeah.
Traded for Dean Marlowe. I could see them doing something like that, of just adding a depth guy with experience.
Do you think there's any way, and by the way, thank you. One of our best and loyal followers and listeners is Michael, who asked us about the trade deadline too. We weren't ignoring you, Michael. It's just all encompassing here. So thank you for your question. Any chance there's anybody they would trade away?
Yeah, I think Mike Edwards is a good option for that. I think that if he's not getting playing time, I think Nicholas Morrow is an option for that. If there's a team out there that's looking for a linebacker, I think there's a really small chance Kyer Elam, but I don't think you would get a good enough return to make the deal.
Agreed.
After that, I can't really think of anybody else.
The only way I would go is they do have some depth on the O-line if a team wants something like that, but with Clayton on IR and not Clayton, who am I thinking of? The IR'd Grable, Tyban Grable. I just, they're not going to trade, Ryan Vandermark or something like that. They need that depth, but they do a pretty good depth there. I agree. I don't think I would see anything like that necessarily happening either. Okay. What else we got for questions here before we move on? I got a couple I want to ask for you. Oh, so here's one question for you. Who should Bills fans root for Thursday night? The Jets or the Texans?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Ooh, they should definitely root for the Jets. However, I think most people will, because the Jets are 2-6, right? You want to hurt the teams in front of you because you trust that you will be able to continue to win, and you've got another game against the Jets. But I think most Bills fans will probably be rooting for the Texans to just really sink the. I mean, if the Jets fall to 2-7, good night, right? Their season's done.
I think a lot of Bills fans are going to root for the Jets. I think Bills fans want to see the Texans lose and the Bills jump them in the standings, in the seedings.
That's what I think is the right team to root for. But it's kind of
it's also kind of gross.
Yeah, it's kind of a win-win. The Jets are, to me, we don't root for teams, whatever, but I always talk about Aaron Rodgers. I know it's a bit at this point, but they're a team that a lot of people watch and root against. I think they have become, I think more people are rooting against the Jets than rooting against the Patriots. Think about that a couple of years ago. We would have never said that.
I know.
But I think people really hate Rodgers and the Jets.
All right. You got anything for me? I got one last one for you before we wrap up.
Well, this is a fun one. And it's just 919 Bills fan. It's not even a question. It's the Grateful Dead are the greatest American band in history.
I saw that.
Discuss. Now you're a music guy, so I feel like I don't agree, but
well, so he said discuss. So what do you think it is?
I don't know, but I don't know if I would go to Grateful Dead.
What does greatest mean? We could have objective opinions on music, but the Rolling Stones could make that argument.
Well, they're not American.
Well, they're British.
Right?
They're British.
Yeah, I was going to say, right?
You're right.
I don't know who it is, but I don't know if I would say the greatest.
American band? Pearl Jam? I don't know.
I was gonna say, like, I immediately got to like Nirvana, Metallica,
Yeah.
Van Halen. Like those are
Mhm.
the ones that I would probably think of. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not a big music guy, so it's hard for me to find somebody better because I just don't know a ton about music. It's outside of my comfort zone.
Well, I have something about music for you. Matthew Bove, why is this the greatest theme song in cinematic history?
See, no, it's not.
It is. It's amazing.
No,
I'm
it's
gonna wear this. By the way, if you didn't see it earlier, because I said it about it, I didn't show you. I'm wearing like one of those skeleton pajamas, and I'm gonna stand outside my door
with
and have this
music
blasting.
playing.
Yes.
I'm not. Here's another take. Not a huge Halloween guy. Just not. I love that. It's a good holiday.
That is great. That is great. That song.
It
gets you like, ooh, yeah, I can feel it.
See, to me, like I get that. Like Halloween to me is Enter Sandman, Metallica. Like I just think that like that's the perfect Halloween, creepy, awesome, fire you up song. I'm just not a scary movie guy at all. At all. I won't watch. I've seen scary movies, but
scariest movie that really scared the living crap out of you when you were a kid.
I went and saw Paranormal Activity in theaters, and that was more suspenseful, but not scary. I think I'm more scared of like gore and gruesome than I am of like suspense. So I saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So I just don't like scary movies, and I refuse to go to a haunted house. There is not there's a number, but the number would be high. If you told me right now, Matt, I'll give you $1,000 to go to a haunted house, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. No way. It's terrifying. I don't want that in my life.
I'm not a haunted house guy either, but I'd do it for $1,000.
Life is hard enough. Like, why am I making things harder on myself? And I know how ridiculous. Yeah. I know there's people who pay. There are people who pay money to go do that, and they're sitting here listening to me, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, what is wrong with this guy?" Apparently, a lot, because I'm not in on those haunted houses.
Well, I mean, I'll go back. The Exorcist, Amityville Horror. These are some really scary movies when I was a kid. But there was one movie, and it is not a super popular movie. Some people might know it. It's called Phantasm. It was made in 1979. I'm looking at it. An American science fantasy horror film. Scared the living crap out of me when I was a kid because I was a kid. And it was kind of a weird, like, B budget movie probably, but that was one. And then I have to be honest with you. Some people tell me, dude, are you kidding me? Blair Witch Project. And I was an adult, and that scared the hell out of me.
Haven't seen it, and I'm sure it would scare the hell out of me also. Just don't have any desire to put myself through that.
You've never seen Halloween? Jamie Lee Curtis, the original?
Nope. Never seen it. No.
I think you should watch it with your wife.
I probably would. I mean, if it's
not like, it's a classic. It is truly a classic scary movie.
Is that Freddy Krueger in the
No, it's not. It's Michael Myers.
Is that in like The Mask with the shower and the knife? Is that what that one is from?
That's Psycho.
You see like the shadow. No, not American Psycho.
Not American Psycho. There's a movie called Psycho where they literally there's a shower scene and they stab. No, this is Halloween. It's Jamie Lee Curtis is a teenager and it's Halloween night, and like there's a killer that comes out from basically was locked up in an asylum that they escaped, and they went back to the scene of where they wanted to redo their kill and go after people. Anyway, but it's a classic Halloween. It's Jamie Lee Curtis, like I said, and that's the kind of like she was amazing. It was her big screen debut.
I've seen Halloween Town, which was a Disney Channel movie. I have seen Hocus Pocus, which is a Disney movie, and
but that's where this theme comes from. Halloween. That's the movie. That's Halloween.
The movie that's from.
Yes,
I am much more of a Christmas person, so the exact opposite. And I will be listening to Christmas music probably Friday morning. So
this is where it comes from.
November.
It's so scary when you're watching and like it's dark and he's chasing her and walking to. Oh, it's crazy.
Like. Here's the thing. I don't like them, but they won't scare me either. Like I don't not watch them because I don't want to be scared. I just, to me, they're like, I don't want to say a waste of time, but I'm like, I don't know. I kind of know how they all end, or at least I think I know how they all end.
Okay, so I would tell you though, I just think that because it is a true classic film.
Mhm.
John Carpenter's Halloween. I think you should watch it. That's
You
all
know,
I'm saying.
another classic movie that I have never seen?
What?
Titanic. Never seen it. I know.
It's one of those movies that if it's on while I'm scrolling, I'm stopping because I love it so much.
Never seen it. Once again, I have not watched it because I know how it ends. I understand that it's a love story between whatever Leonardo DiCaprio and whoever the woman
Kate
is.
Winslet?
And yeah, like I
Yes.
get that there's a lot more to it, but it's way too long. And it is, I just have no desire. There's like 3 big movies that I've never seen. Titanic is one of them. I've never seen it. I have never seen Avatar, that movie that everybody lost their mind over a couple years ago. I've never seen Avatar. And there's one other big one that I haven't seen that now I'm like
I guarantee you
struggling.
there's a lot of big ones you haven't seen since you're telling me all this.
Oh,
I
probably.
mean, there's a lot of ones I haven't seen too.
Do you have a favorite movie?
Ever?
Ever?
I have a lot of them. I would say maybe, I mean, I'm kind of, because it was when I was a kid and I loved it and I like the music, the Blues Brothers. It's like one of my favorite
Okay.
movies ever.
Sure.
Like movies that I'd be like, oh my God, yeah, that's a great movie. I'm scrolling past it. Shawshank Redemption, right?
Shawshank. I was going to say,
Yeah.
to me,
One of my
like,
favorites.
Shawshank, Good Will Hunting.
A Few Good Men.
Yeah, like there's a lot of really good movies. I would have immediately got to Good Will Hunting or Shawshank. And also, it kind of leans into the Christmas thing. Elf is legitimately one of my favorite movies. Not even just a Christmas movie. It is such a good movie.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoy your Halloween. Don't steal the kids' candies when they bring it home. Let them enjoy it, but don't scare the kids out there either. Make sure you have plenty if you're going to have trick-or-treaters at your house. I have a World Series game to go watch because we're recording this. It is 8:12 and first pitch was 8:08. And if I shut this off and go downstairs and find out that Freddie Freeman hit another home run in the first inning, I'm going to be really, really upset.
Well, I hope for your sake that you enjoy this game, but obviously you know who I'm rooting for, so
I know.
I'm just not going to say anything.
All right, listen, thanks a lot to Alain Poupart. We really appreciate him joining us today. We'll talk to you again as the week goes on and into Sunday when the Bills take on the Miami Dolphins. Again, wherever you pod, we're right there for you. It's always Game Day in Buffalo and, of course, at the Sal Sports YouTube channel. Thanks a lot. Matt, have a great Halloween. Enjoy it.
You too.